To a tricky question. How would you react if 3 of your children were killed in an instant by a tank shell? And if it happened just 3 months after your wife, their mother, had died from leukemia? Well, many of us would probably fall apart, unable to cope with such unimaginable, unbearable tragedy. But this is precisely what happened to Palestinian gynecologist Dr. Izzeldin Abu Aleish in Gaza in 2009, when part of his house was destroyed by an Israeli tank during the 3-week conflict of that time. And yet, Dr. Abu Aleish hasn't fallen apart. Quite the opposite. He's made a new life for himself and his remaining children in Canada and turned his tragedy into a powerful plea for reconciliation. The BBC reported on what happened to Dr. Abu Aleish at the time. He was also well known to Israeli TV viewers during the conflict because of his friendship and interviews with one reporter. In fact, after the attack on his house, straight after, he called him live on air, partly to summon medical help for the injured. Well, here he has been interviewed by us in the days after.
They are sitting there, 4 daughters, 2 nieces, in their own room. And I started to play with my youngest child, whom I carried on my shoulders. Just seconds after I left their room, the first bomb. I started to scream, looking at them, bodies, parts, here, there, the heads. What can I do at that time?
Well, Dr. Abu Aleish came into the NewsHour studio a little earlier today. I began by asking him what he remembered of the day his daughters were killed.
It lives with me. It runs with me. I see my daughters. I talk to them. And on a daily basis, I am reminded, because the situation in the Gaza Strip is the same situation and the suffering. And I see it in everyday suffering in this part of the world, in Syria, in Yemen, in Afghanistan. I see in these children, my daughters, to remind me and to live with me all of the time. And my daughters who are asking me, what did you do for us? Did you forget us? I say to them, I will never forget you. I am determined to keep moving. The tragedy is there. Tragedies are not the end of our life, and we must not allow tragedies to be the end of our life. And thanks God, we succeeded.
Do you remember the panic, though, in those immediate moments afterwards, and also your thought processes that led you to ring your Israeli friend, because that's a crucial part of what happened afterwards, isn't it?
Of course, at that moment, we were under fear, under attacks from everywhere. We are expecting the worst all of the time. But thanks God to give me the wisdom and to think rational at that moment and to direct my face to God and to call my friend who was supposed to interview me. So I called him to expose the secret and to show that there are human civilians who are killed on a daily basis, and to put an end to this tragedy.
At that point, it was also about getting some medical help for the rest of your family, wasn't it?
Who were severely wounded, my daughter, my niece, my brother, and the others who were under threat. So I asked to stop the shelling and to take them to the Palestinian hospitals, and then from there to be transferred to the Israeli hospital where I used to work.
And what sort of reception did you get when you ended up in those Israeli hospitals? I mean, was there sympathy, great sympathy?
Of course, it opened the eyes of the Israeli public about the human face of the Palestinian people. But do we need to be killed in order to show the others that we are human? We are neighbors, and we need to live as neighbors, as equal human beings, and that the human life of the Palestinian is equal to the human life of the Israelis.
Why do you think your house was shelled?
From my side, there is no reason to be killed, my daughters, or to be targeted. We are human civilians sitting in our home. There was no reason.
Have you had an apology from Israel for what happened?
That's the most painful part. Last March, we went there to testify at the court, and my daughter, who was severely wounded, and she lost the sight in her right eye. When they asked her, how do you feel? She said, I feel in pain, as if I am killed another time, to prove that I am a victim. And we are asking just for apology.
Why? What does it signify, that apology? Is it an acknowledgement of the terrible mistake
that we are
happened?
human, that they are human beings, to give them the dignity and the right of apology, the acknowledgement of their existence?
So why do you think it hasn't happened, given how high profile your case has been?
You need to ask the politicians, the leaders. We need that courage to acknowledge and to respect and to value human life, and to have that moral courage to say we made a mistake. We take responsibility, we apologize for what happened, and then we can move forward. I moved forward, and my daughters are kept alive through good deeds and spreading hope in a time of despair in this world.
And how have you managed to maintain that hope? How did you stop it turning to hate? Was it a conscious effort?
Of course, it's a conscious effort, because as a medical doctor, the only impossible thing I believe in is to return my daughters back. I can't return them back, but I can keep them alive. And I see them while I am talking to you. I see them. They are in front of me. It's my faith which helped me a lot.
Did you feel the hate bubbling up on
I will
occasion, though?
never feel, and I say to people, if you face any tragedy, if you face any harm from anyone, don't allow hatred to approach you. Hatred is destructive, contagious disease to the one who carries it. Hatred is a poison. We need to be strong in order to move forward.
Do you see any hope at the moment in the Middle East? There seems to be very little common understanding between the two sides. They seem as far apart as they have ever been.
They are far apart, but both are alive, and that's the hope. In medicine, as long as the patient is still alive, there is hope. And the Palestinians and the Israelis and the Middle East, the people there are alive, but it needs the wisdom and the international community and all of the people to work together from violence to inclusiveness, to partnership and sharing, and to understand that the human life and the freedom is the most precious thing.
But do you think, though, that people on both sides have stopped seeing the other side as human beings?
We need justice, and justice means putting yourself in the position of the others. And when we speak about both sides are not equal. We need to equalize between them, the Palestinians and the Israelis, because the Palestinians are suffering on daily basis. We need to equalize between them and to live as good neighbors, as equal citizens in independent states. We need to humanize, not to politicize. We are disconnected. How close are we as neighbors, but we are far from each other? See my Israeli friends who live in Ashkelon, close to Gaza Strip. They don't know what is happening in Gaza Strip, which is a disaster. Can you sleep and your neighbor is hungry? Can you eat? Can you run a normal life and your neighbor without electricity, without freedom? And our neighbors are disconnected from what is happening in the Gaza Strip, and the world also is watching what is happening.
And that was Dr. Izzaldin Abu Aleish speaking to me a little earlier today.